Hi there, my name is Greg Robinson, and I am the Director of Community Development and Human Resources for the town of Raymond. Before I'd like to begin my presentation to you, I'd like to invite each of you today to think about your town, your city, your municipality. Think about your community. Think about what possibilities exist, perhaps right in your own backyard. Think about the barriers in accomplishing those tasks or those opportunities, because this story is exactly how this began with a question just like that. So, when you think of Alberta, what are the first things that come to your mind? Well, a lot of people think about cowboys. They might think about things like Banff National Park, which is a real treasure. Think about farming. Obviously, the majestic Rocky Mountains are fantastic. Think about agriculture in terms of food production. That's one of the things that Alberta is known for. And of course, oil and gas is one of the biggest economies driving sectors in Canada, let alone Alberta. I think about the Edmonton Oilers, and of course, Canada's best NHL team, the Calgary Flames. And a Bashed Flame fan. Okay. But did you know that Alberta is home to the world's largest Ukrainian Easter egg? Huh. Who would have thought? But really, Raymond isn't much of those things other than the agriculture area, but Raymond is right above the US border. We're about an hour north of Montana, just to give you a sense of geography. But we are not really a typical small town. We are home to Canada's first Stampede Rodeo. Um, we are also a fairly older community. We were established in 1901. We are home to many things, a lot of them being around sports and recreation. We have many residents, a few residents in Raymond that have gone on to professional careers in football, and even a few of them have a Grey Cup championship. We have many professional basketball players, rodeo athletes, and even Olympian or two. So that's Raymond in a nutshell. But when you think of all those things, did you know that we have lots of infrastructure, but did you know that some of those things look like this, this, this? All of these things can be found right here in Raymond. And we're proud to be Canada's first municipality to be electrically net zero, which is what brings me to you today. So our net zero project started a few years ago. In fact, it started off in 2014 with an audit and energy and assessment report. That report, what we hired a contractor for, was to basically go around and look at all of our buildings and do an assessment to see what our readiness might be and what our buildings could handle. The initial report, however, indicated that none of our buildings in Raymond were actually suitable for solar electricity. And so we kind of took that as a bit of a punch in the gut and took the report at face value. That being said, just a couple of years after this report, a neighboring community that we have a fairly healthy competitive rivalry with, Cardston, Alberta, recently completed their solar project on their community center. And we kind of thought, well, look, obviously they're only about a half hour away from Raymond. Obviously, if a town like Cardston can do something like this, then how come Raymond wasn't suitable? How come we weren't on the list that we could find proper solar electricity for? So we began to look at new ways. We approached the town of Cardston, and asked them questions about how they accomplished their project, who they used. We actually reached out to their contractor, and there was a large energy company from Calgary, Enmax Energy, and we spoke with them and asked them about, well, look, if Cardston was positive in moving forward with their project, maybe Raymond could be too. And so we invited them to come into our community. And in fact, the answer was completely opposite of what our contractor in 2016 had found. And that is many of our buildings, in fact, most of them were really excellently suited for solar, and that solar was well positioned for Raymond. And in 2017, just a year after that, we began to look at opportunities for solar. We initially looked at some of our biggest electricity consumption areas, and that was our ice arena. We looked at a few other areas in town, our sports field that I showed you earlier. All of these things we identified right away. Um, and so we started working on what we didn't call it then, we call it now phase one, which was covering these buildings with solar to offset the electrical uses for each of these buildings. That changed even more the next year. And in 2018, the province of Alberta had changed rules for microgenerators, which was the program that we were following under. And in 2018, that changed and allowed us to use solar so long as it was on a municipally owned site or property. It could offset consumption for a different site that we owned. So that really helped us address other areas that we felt were really important. We had some shortfalls. Just for example, our pool, the roof was not large enough to offset all of its electricity needs. When we put the solar panels up on that building, we have things like street lights and sewage lagoon pumps and irrigation thing. All of these things are just not, we haven't really seen a lot of street lighting that's solar powered. In fact, none around my area of neck of the woods. However, I know it exists. It exists now, but some of these places just weren't suitable for us to put up solar panels on. And so with these rule changes that happened in 2018, that made us look at basically taking our entire electrical bill and plopping it all down on offsetting all of it with solar electricity. And so our council then in 2018 approved a $2.8 million project for offsetting 100% of our operations electrically for solar. So just a few highlights of our project. It is 100% municipally owned. Part of the project was funded, 25% of it was funded from a municipal grant from the Municipal Climate Change Action Center, which is a department of the province of Alberta. We have borrowed money to basically cover off the infrastructure or the capital. However, it's still a relatively cash neutral project. So what that means is what we would normally be paying for electricity on these buildings essentially is going towards the payments, the capital lease payments, instead of just going out the window to electrical companies. So when this lease is completed and paid off, that should be about 15 to 16 years from now. That will save us about $150,000 annually just on our operating costs alone. We do expect, solar panels have been around for a long time. It's not really a new concept. We do know that they do experience and see shortness of life, but that's over about a 30 to 40-year period. So we feel that even for us, just a 16-year simple payback will be on the table for us. The nice thing too, obviously outside of the economics of the project, we are going to reduce CO2 emissions over 25 years to about 20,000 tons just from this project alone. And we're incredibly proud that our project can not only be a financial sustainability model, but an environmental one as well. So when you look at a project of this size and you see the positive impacts that it has, and you look at the ways that it can really form future councils and future decisions, we look at what are some of those next steps. Obviously, communities don't want to be just done whenever they complete a significant project like this. So obviously there are some next steps. But before I show you that detail, I wanted to share something with you. Before my job as the community development director, I was on our Raymond Town Council for almost 8 years. So I share this message with you today as someone who has a bit of an understanding of the duty of care placed on you as elected officials. You make decisions each and every day for your prospective communities, and those are critically important decisions. Decisions that are best for you, your neighbors, and your families. Not every project or program is always going to be about black ink or a positive net balance on a spreadsheet. You decide where those precious dollars, tax dollars that are spent in your communities, whether they might be on community centers, pools, ice arenas, roads, parks, sidewalks, sewage, water lines, all of those things are where your tax dollars that you decide where they're spent. I can say with some surety that they aren't always decisions that are based on a positive balance sheet. So whether there are grants out there like that we used or not, I would encourage you to at least open your minds a bit today to a project something like this. Think about being more sustainable for your community, both financially and environmentally. Think about energy security. How can you prepare your community for volatility in the energy market? It's about the long-term benefit alternative energy might even have for your community. So we talked about, I just mentioned energy security, and that was a really important part for us, is creating an opportunity. We don't own our electrical grid. I know many cities do. Small communities generally do not. And so that was a really important part for us. What are the next steps that we could look at? We could possibly expand that project into a phase 3 and expand the opportunity for our commercial businesses and our residents to actually connect their homes and businesses to our solar infrastructure, and even offsetting all of their electrical needs to solar electricity. We've created a brand new environmental strategic plan. Again, we're a community of 4,200 people. These are things that small communities generally don't do. And this really paves us an opportunity that we have for future funding opportunities, for future direction for future councils. We want to address the efficiencies internally. What are some of those things that we can do to decrease our electric consumption? Those are really important questions that I know all municipalities are asking right now. Talk about community resilience. What are the impacts that climate change might have to a disaster or to some sort of extreme weather event in your community? And we've been working with a nonprofit group called West Canada to help us through that process. We're looking at electrifying our golf carts and our golf course, taking them entirely off of fossil fuels to now we literally collect the energy from our own solar infrastructure and charge our golf cars for our recreation purposes. It's a kind of a neat and amazing concept. Potentially looking at electrification of our work fleet. We have trucks that our public works crews use day in and day out. Those things could be converted. So I really wanted to thank you for taking time today to talk about this project, and I'm always open to questions that you may have. But I wanted to show you just some close-up photos of our buildings and some of our areas that I feel we're really proud of. So this is our ice arena, typical it's an older building built in the 60s. And it has an east-west facing roof, and it's a wonderful generator for electricity here. This is Victoria Sports Park, beautiful new field built a few years ago. This carport that you see there, that's along the parking lot, actually is one of the major collectors for our street lighting and all of our other areas that we had shortfalls. So we have our golf course there. We've called it Hell's Creek, our town hall. Our water plant, which actually provides potable water to about 6 different communities, is entirely now offset by solar electricity. That's the carport I mentioned to you before, and that's our aquatic center there on the right. Beautiful amenity to our community, and we feel it's just a real positive thing to have it covered. So before I close today, close my comments, I just wanted to give you one quote that a good friend of mine, Doug Griffiths, has shared with me. And that is that success comes from finding what makes you unique and pursuing that boldly. Being so uniquely bold is not for the faint of heart, but is necessary for those who realize they need to embrace change for a prosperous future. And that really sums up what Raymond does so well every single day. So I'll now open up to questions or comments that you may have.